Warning, the following program contains news talk, solutions, and information not found in filtered media outlets. Viewer discretion is advised.
Attention, you are now about to enter
Filter-Free Radio.
So open your mind, push reset, and reboot your computer.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Looking for filters? Check your coffee maker. This is Filter-Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. Filterfreeradio.com. Get ready to suck down some grounds.
When I talk about resistance, I think we have to stand up now and carry out acts of nonviolent resistance.
Because the truth is, we do have power.
We live in revolutionary times, but the counter-revolution is winning.
Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
Live Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Filterfreeradio.com.
This is my favorite show.
We have been given an opportunity to make a new beginning.
And I think it's very important for us to start to build a culture of resistance because what we're doing isn't working, clearly.
It's our job to very coldly assess reality and then figure out how to respond.
Your number one source for unfiltered truth, analysis, and solutions. Filterfreeradio.com.
We are broadcasting live February 10th, 2014. Coming up in the first hour of this episode, we are going to get into this conversation.
And before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured. The highest standard we can set. Yes, the conflict with Al-Qaeda, like all armed conflict, invites tragedy. But by narrowly targeting our action against those who want to kill us and not the people they hide among, we are choosing the course of action least likely to result in the loss of innocent life.
Right.
They do not require an actual human confirmation that the individual SIM card or phone handset that they're tracking is in fact possessed by the person that they believe is a potential terrorist. And so this is essentially death by metadata, where they think or they hope that the phone that they're blowing up is in the possession of a person that they've identified as a potential terrorist. But in the end, they don't actually really know. And that's where the real danger with this program lies.
But wait, there's more.
This is the NSA using a form of signals intelligence to first determine who should be targeted for assassination based on an analysis of their metadata. Has this person called what we think are bad people enough times for us to decide that they should die? And then secondly, trying to help the CIA and JSOC find those individuals who have been put on a list of basically assassination, but not by finding where they are, but by finding where their telephone is. A very obviously unreliable way of trying to kill people that is certain to result in the death of innocent people.
Certainly. And not only that conversation, but what those two guys, Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill, are up to in their new endeavors. We got to talk about so much to get into. In the second hour of the program, we are going to finally break down something that is so important, so critical to not only us moving forward, but this program, Filter Free Radio. We're going to break down Bill Moyer and his 1987 The Movement Action Plan, the strategic framework, 8 steps to successful social movements. We are going to break down how to have a successful social movement for real change and how to maintain that movement. Huge show in the second hour. And, of course, I've got a new name for the puppy. We have a winner in the puppy naming contest. I'm going to tell you that in the second hour of the program who the winner is. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, check out the previous episode, episode 104. Without further ado, I have to welcome back, it's been a couple of weeks, our super duper awesome mass producer, co-host, kick-ass, all-around brother from another mother, Mr. Skeptical Scott, is back in action, live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
Hello.
What's up, buddy?
Hello.
How you doing, man?
And the Puppy Society.
What?
Don't you remember Billy Madison?
Right, of course. And the Mr. Penguin and all that good stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yes, Filter Free Radio now with a 100% more puppy. I totally fluffed it up last week, man. You missed a great puppy Super Bowl football show, man. And
I wouldn't say I missed it.
But there's so much to get into today. I'm so happy you're back. It's always great to have you by my side, brother, and all the folks in the chat room hanging out with us at radioornot.com or at filterfreeradio.com. Friends, alternative thinkers, independent minds, unfiltered truth seekers. We are broadcasting live Monday, February 10th, 2014, Filter Free Radio, our show where we are tired of being fed up with the status quo. We're going to talk about how we can change it, mobilizing the people to get active and be the change, because if we can reach just one person and make a difference in their life, then we've made a lifetime of difference, and that to me is a success. Thank you so much for joining us live, filterfreeradio.com, as well as radioornot.com. We're live on TuneIn via Liberal Justice Radio. Tip of the hat to Kenny Pick. He's the man. And if you want to carry Filter Free Radio in any way, in some fashion or another, let me know. And we can do it for free still. Hey, Jacob at filterfreeradio.com. All right. So much to get into. You've got the Syrian peace talks are resuming in Geneva. The second round of the Syrian peace talks has resumed today after a 1-week break. You have a development in the Bangladesh factory owners surrendering over that deadly fire that killed 112 workers in 2012, that fire in Bangladesh. 2 owners of that Bangladesh garment factory have turned themselves in, and they're among 6 people wanted in connection with that worst fire factory in Bangladesh's history. And keep on buying your clothes from Walmart. Other news, unrelated news, new report about Edward Snowden. This is interesting. U.S. intelligence officials are claiming Edward Snowden stole Internal National Security Agency NSA documents by using cheap and widely available software that still went mostly undetected. Speaking to the New York Times, investigators looking into the Snowden case said he developed a simple web crawler that automatically downloaded 1.7 million files. This is great. In a statement, Edward Snowden himself responded, quote, "It's ironic that officials are giving classified information to journalists in an effort to discredit me for giving classified information to journalists. The difference is that I did so to inform the public about the government's actions. They are doing so to misinform the public about mine." End of quote from Edward Snowden. In other news, the Moral Mondays are taking over North Carolina. I kind of like to think of Filter Free Radio as like a virtual Moral Monday, sort of, right? Tens
online anyway.
Yeah, online, right? As to the extent of an online activist can be, right? Tens of thousands, 100,000 people almost showed up in Raleigh, North Carolina over the weekend to protest far right-wing policies of the state's Republican government there. They're calling it the Moral March in reference to the Moral Mondays protest, where they did 13 weeks of actions against what critics call a Republican assault on poor people, the unemployed, voting rights, education, the environment, healthcare, and women's rights. Hey, man, whatever gets you out in the streets to protest, by all means. I just want to mention it's not only the Republican Party, and you should check out Open Debates 2016 on how we are partnering with other folks to make a difference and to make the alternative third-party candidates a successful part of 2016. It's opendebates2016.com. There's a link to that on our website. Other news, hey, if you're like me and enjoy a cheeseburger once in a while, and I mean like once in a while, I'm really cutting back, I'm trying to lose weight, and this new puppy is making me work. A livestock company has recalled 8.7 million pounds of beef parts over the use of diseased and unsound animals and a lack of proper inspection. The Rancho Feeding Corporation says the meat was shipped to California, Florida, Illinois, and Texas during the first week of January. They had not had a federal inspection in a year.
Yummy.
Just a heads up, man. I'm just looking out for you.
You know, I don't eat red meat because I know it's bad for me, but the real reason I don't eat it is because you never know if you're going to get poisoned.
Yeah, right. And so, of course, I just eat chicken, chicken ain't looking too hot either, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's the food industrial complex. Eat local and sustainable. Know where your food comes from. Know the person who grew and raised your food.
Save the world one bite at a time, man. That is, I love how you're just taking that on, dude. And one of these days, we got to really get into how active you are getting in that, which is great.
It's just a lifestyle change more than activism. I mean, I lost 40 pounds by making myself eat only local foods.
Yeah.
And I still eat a lot of food. I just eat local. And I know the person who raises the pigs and the livestock that I eat. I know where my vegetables come from. I actually help grow those vegetables, and it's priceless. It's also good exercise.
There you go, man. Other headline, and these headlines come to us with thanks to Democracy Now, democracynow.org, which if you're not already watching and reading on a daily basis, it's like the best hour of news you can get anywhere on a daily basis, democracynow.org. 17 activists arrested for protesting U.S. drone warfare at the New York Air Base in 2012 have been found guilty of disorderly conduct, but not guilty of trespassing. The 17 people were detained after creating that blockade outside the Hancock Field Air National Guard Base, holding signs and pictures of children killed by U.S. drone attacks overseas. The base is used to pilot overseas U.S. drones remotely. On Friday, the activists were sentenced to 15 days behind bars, and the judge called a message to encourage the demonstrators to stop their protests. Meanwhile, in unrelated news, that was sarcasm.
That sounds fundamentally anti-democratic on behalf of our justice system, but hey, whatever.
What justice? Anyways, the irony, right? In unrelated news, it sarcastically is very related. Afghan civilian death up 14% last year, up 35% for women and children. New figures show an increasing number of civilians are dying in Afghanistan, innocent civilians. The United Nations says civilian casualties rose 14% last year. Last year, in 2013, was the worst year for Afghan women and children since 2009, when casualties rising a combined 35%. And insert the brand new media outlet of Jeremy Scahill, of Glenn Greenwald, and other radical truth-telling journalists who remain fearless and willing to inform you and I of what's actually happening. I'll tell you right now, The Intercept, which you can find at theintercept.org, and First Look Media, which is at firstlook.org, are going to be my, two #1 bookmarked websites, checking it every day, already signed up on the email list, already following them on Twitter. I'm telling you, this is big stuff.
Well, there's very few journalist outlets left, so the fact that we have a new one is, especially exciting. And considering that really our only two investigative journalists who are left, who are, groundbreaking, if you will, are Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras. And I mean, it's awesome. Thank God I got some funding, right?
Yeah. And so you need to check out the websites. It's firstlook.org and then theintercept.org. And this is directly from their website, because I just found this today, kind of just went public today, and everyone's kind of like, whoa, it's happening right now. And then they published this article, which we're going to get into. But we are very excited to welcome everyone to The Intercept, a publication of First Look Media. We have assembled a team of experienced and independent journalists and editors. Our central mission is to hold the most powerful governmental and corporate factions accountable, and to do so, we will report on a wide and varied range of issues. As our team grows, I'm kind of editing this as I go along, reading wise. As our team grows, the ethos they embody of fearless independent journalism is what will guide us. The Intercept has a twofold mission, a short-term and a long-term plan. The short-term mission is limited but critically important to provide a platform and an editorial structure in which to aggressively report on the disclosures provided to us by our sources, NSA whistleblower and Edward Snowden, we decided to launch now because we believe we have a vital and urgent obligation to this story, to these documents, and to the public. Over the past 7 months, the journalists who have reported on these documents from the National Security Agency have been repeatedly threatened by a wide range of governmental officials. Sometimes the intimidation campaign has gone beyond mere threat. These attempted imitation tactics have intensified in recent weeks and have become clearly more concerted and coordinated. None of this will deter the journalism we are doing. Right on, man. A primary that I added that. The right on man part. Back to the website. A primary function of The Intercept is to insist upon and defend our press freedoms from those who wish to infringe them. We are determined to move forward with what we believe is essential reporting in the public interest and with a commitment to the ideal that a truly free and independent press is a vital component of any healthy democratic society. Woo! Yeah, why didn't I get Glenn Greenwald to write my mission statement for Filter Free Radio? Should have done that, right?
I think he's got better things to do.
Yeah, right. Totally better things to do. And then they've got 2 new articles up at The Intercept, which are now published. The first of them, which we're going to get into now, by Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald, documents the NSA's use of highly unreliable methods to target individuals around the world for assassinations by drones, resulting in deaths of innocent people. I just read you the headline. Innocent Afghanistan casualties up 13% last year alone, right? Okay, so if you go to theintercept.org, not only do you see this really cool the first time published, apparently they're publishing a photo of the NSA building, which I guess is a big no-no and you're not supposed to do or something, and they're doing it. But we'll get into the legality with Glenn Greenwald via Democracy Now! In just a couple minutes on all of this. Are they actually justified in publishing this information, right? And just for the record, we are not disclosing anything that has not already been disclosed by Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, The Intercept, and Democracy Now! Okay, that's our source. So this is...
Just for the public record, government.
Just for the record. Hey, NSA, thanks for listening.
Yeah, really.
At least somebody is.
Homeland Security and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And this is the title of the article. The title of the article. The NSA's secret role in the U.S. assassination program. What? That makes you go, what? And written by Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, published today, February 10th, 2014. First Look Media, firstlook.org, and The Intercept, theintercept.org. From the article, the National Security Agency is using complex analysis of electronic surveillance rather than human intelligence as the primary method to locate targets for lethal drone strikes, an unreliable tactic that results in the death of innocent or unidentified people. They have a news source. According to this news source, a former drone operator for the military's Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, who also worked with the NSA, the agency often identifies targets based on controversial metadata analysis and cell phone tracking technologies. Rather than confirming a target's identity to make sure that they know who they're trying to kill is in fact who they're trying to kill, and when they kill them, before they actually kill them, they made sure it was the right guy first. Without actually doing that, rather than confirming a target's identity with operatives or informants on the ground, the CIA, the U.S. military, orders a strike based on the activity and the location of the mobile phone a person is believed to be using.
Well, time to get rid of mobile phones. It's just really frightening. I mean, the whole notion of extrajudicial killing. What a nice term, extrajudicial. How about murder? How about illegal murder of,
Yes.
U.S. citizens, of anybody for that matter, without, trial by jury? Whatever happened to the I mean, The Hague. Remember what we did to all the Gestapo after the war? I mean, we put them on trial. We didn't just execute them for obvious war crimes. I mean, it's like, God, we've become the tyranny that we supposedly are allegedly fighting. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it's totally irrational. It's just insane, and that's what happens when systems are corrupt. I mean, how else do you cover your ass? It's the whole notion of why do we have terrorism? Because we are the world's foremost terrorists.
Right.
But to acknowledge that is fundamentally anti-American. It's just you can't even have these conversations with people. I try and tell people these informations that I learned from Scahill and Glenn Greenwald and others, and it's like, and of course Chris Hedges, and they're like, well, I agree with Chris Hedges, but I think that Edward Snowden went too far, and he was working for the Russians. And it's like, are you fucking serious? It's like, well, what are you reading? The Washington Post? Oh yeah, okay, that explains why you think that way. It's, the decimation of rational, critical thought. If you put two and two together, you're like, well, obviously, what's going on here is that we are covering up our asses for all the war crimes we've done around the world.
Yep.
And it just becomes, the term blowback. It becomes exponential. It's just a downward spiral until totalitarianism. It's just, it's so frustrating, man. God, people are starving in the streets and homeless and unemployed, and we have a $10 billion, budget for. I'm looking at the article, by the way, on firstlook.org, and it says the pictures that guy published on firstlook.org of the National Reconnaissance Office. I didn't even know such an organization existed until just now, and it's the third largest intelligence agency with a budget of $10,000 million. I never even heard of it before, and it's in Chantilly, Virginia, which isn't far from me, and yet it's the third largest one, and all that money could be used for what? Social uplift, and not suppression of people from foreign lands. It's just, oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, dude, I'm totally with you. One of the things you mentioned though in that is that you're right. This is kind of scary stuff. It's a little scary, and it gets real scary when it's explained by the man himself. And you wonder why I love Democracy Now! So much. This is a perfect example of why I love Democracy Now! So much. The biggest news story of the day, this article by Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald, the NSA secret role in the U.S. assassination program. The biggest story of the day, Democracy Now! Has on both Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald live.
Where else are you going to find that?
To talk about it. Where else are you going to find that? I don't have the power to swing both Jeremy and Glenn on this program, so I rely on awesome work by Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, to be able to share this with you. This is from today's program. This is Jeremy Scahill explaining kind of essentially really this story to everyone, and this is just remarkable. This is unedited too, 1 minute and 45 seconds. I don't play clips this long normally, but I can't break this up. It's too good. Just listen to this.
Well, Amy, we're living in the era of pre-crime, where President Obama is continuing many of the same policies of his predecessor, George Bush, and Vice President Dick Cheney. And there's this incredible reliance on technology to kill people who the United States thinks, doesn't necessarily know, but thinks may one day pose some sort of a threat of committing an act of terrorism or of impacting U.S. interests. And the U.S. wants to shy away from having its own personnel on the ground in countries like Yemen or Pakistan or Somalia, eventually Afghanistan. And so what's happened is that there's this incredible reliance on the use of remotely piloted aircraft, i.e. drones. What we discovered in the course of talking to sources, including this new source that we have who worked with both the Joint Special Operations Command and the National Security Agency, is that the NSA is providing satellite technology and communications intercept technology to the U.S. military special operations forces and the CIA that essentially mimics the activities of a cell phone tower and forces individual SIM cards or handsets of phones. There's two separate devices. When you have your telephone, your mobile phone, you have a SIM card in it, and that can be tracked, but also the device itself can be tracked. And what they do is they force the SIM card or the handset of individuals that they're tracking onto these cell phone networks, and the people don't know that their phones are being forced onto this cell phone tower that is literally put on the bottom of a drone and acts as a virtual transceiver. And so when they are able to triangulate where this individual is, they can locate or track them to within about 30 feet or so of their location.
Oh my goodness. Do you get that? Did you get all that? I hope so, because there was a lot there. And that's essentially Jeremy Scahill laying out really what's going on. But it gets worse. It gets better. It gets even more scary. And this is really disturbing. And this is like kind of like, what's the big deal here? Well, they're killing people and they're not even sure really before they kill them if they're the right people that they're targeting to kill. And they is us. And shouldn't we be concerned about this? Back to Jeremy Scahill this morning on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.
They do not require an actual human confirmation that the individual SIM card or phone handset that they're tracking is in fact possessed by the person that they believe is a potential terrorist. And so what we understand is that this is essentially death by metadata, where they think or they hope that the phone that they're blowing up is in the possession of a person that they've identified as a potential terrorist. But in the end, they don't actually really know, and that's where the real danger with this program lies. And the reason that our source came forward to talk about us is because he was a part of this program and was a participant in operations where he knew the identity of one individual that was being targeted, but other people were killed alongside of that person. And he also said that he just felt incredibly uncomfortable with the idea that they're killing people's phones in the effort to kill them, and that they don't actually know who the people are that are holding those phones.
You gotta be kidding me, right?
Wow. It's just so... I'm at a loss for words. It's really just stunning. It's just incredibly dangerous. It's like it's so Orwellian. I mean, the system itself is set up that desensitizes everybody. It's like become a video game. We're killing people halfway around the world by playing a video game based on computer algorithms of metadata. It has nothing to do with actual intelligence. It's insanity, you know? And it's like there's even catchphrases for it. Like Jeremy Scahill says, we track them, you whack them. You know, that was what those guys, the internal jargon.
I haven't heard that before.
I didn't see it. That was in the article, yeah. And he mentions it in the interview today on Democracy Now!, where they're like, it's what the one remote control drone pilot said. It's like, the NSA tracks them and we whack them, and it's the whole catchphrase. And there's so many the euphemisms that they use, like shenanigans is one. The Irish these limericks that are used for one of the terms of the what do you call it? I guess the drone attacks or whatever program that they have, the shenanigans. Just these names. It's just so. It's surreal. It's not even like. It's so dehumanizing. And in the name of what? I mean, to what end is this happening? It's other than. I mean, as near as I can tell, the only thing is to further, obviously, the war profiteers who make this kind of technology. In addition to securing natural resources for our fossil fuel industries, and that's really about it. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for these people are really not going to do us any harm. I mean, some goat herder in Yemen is not going to come to the United States and kill us. We certainly stopped them before we got here, and even still, why would he want to do that? Because obviously we killed his entire family and his wedding party. I mean, we've killed how many wedding parties now? I think like 3 or 4. Just based on cell phone usage. I mean, you're talking about wiping out entire families during the peak moment of joy, all in the name of metadata. I mean, it's insanity.
It is insanity, man. And I'm happy you mentioned, Scott, the name of that program. I've got to come back. We're going to share with you another clip, a couple clips from Democracy Now!, Jeremy Scahill. What exactly did this new source of information disclose to Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, and the folks at the newly created theintercept.org? And plus, all sorts of other things coming up in the second hour of the program. The movement action plan, how we're going to create successful social movements and maintain them. Filter Free Radio. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
transmission. This is Liberal Justice Radio.
It's not real. It's just a computer-generated fantasy.
Liberal Justice Radio on TuneIn and A Online Radio.
Filter-free radio. Filter-free radio. Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean. With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Many activists, myself in the beginning included, mistakenly think that when we're protesting that our target is the government or our target is this corporation, when in fact the real target of our activism is mobilizing the people.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
You're basically evangelizing. You're trying to get more people on your side to reach a critical mass to bring about real change.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Years ago, the delightfully naughty movie star Mae West said, "I used to be Snow White, but I drifted." Less delightful are some of the purity claims of such food manufacturing giants as PepsiCo, which has long marketed a line of its Frito-Lay snack foods as simply natural. Natural? Anyone who's even looked at one of the company's strangely puffed, caterpillar-esque cheese-powdered Cheetos would have a hard time believing nature had anything to do with the concoctions. Sure enough, PepsiCo has quietly dropped the volatile natural claim from its snack packages, rebranding them with just the word simply. The multi-billion-dollar food maker says the shift is merely a routine adjustment of its marketing scheme. But it comes only after consumer groups have taken Pepsi, Campbell Soup, and other manufacturers to court in the past couple of years, successfully challenging their use of the natural phrase as deceptive hype. PepsiCo settled one of its cases last year by paying out $9 million to the challengers and agreeing to stop labeling its Naked Juice brand as all natural. A marketing pitch for these drinks had bragged that they were, quote, the freshest, purest stuff in the world. The naked truth, however, was that they were not only juiced up with artificial vitamins and synthetic fibers, but also included an additive made from formaldehyde, a cancer-causing compound. This is Jim Hightower saying, the conglomerates say that advertising terms like natural are widely misunderstood by us stupid consumers. Well, there they go again, drifting from the truth and perverting plain English. Natural simply means what it says, natural. As in, go squeeze an orange and don't dose it with formaldehyde and lies. To keep up with the industry's drift from purity, link up with Organic Consumers Association. They're at www.organicconsumers.org.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to The Nicole Sandler Show at RadioOrNot.com.
Greg Palast, I realized as we were talking that actually we were supposed to do this on Wednesday, so thank you so much for bearing with me.
Well, I am thrilled that we were doing that. You've jumped the other characters. Because, Nicole, I just think that your show is brilliant, and I want to thank you because my stuff may be prime time in Britain. But here, I keep slamming into the electronic Berlin Wall, and you have snuck me across and into the information stream. And I hope that your listeners are aware of how important and precious your program is. So I want to thank you.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime at RadioOrNot.com.
Hey friends, Jacob Dean here with exciting news. You can now hear my show, Filter Free Radio, on the free Stitcher mobile app. Just download the free Stitcher app from Stitcher.com or in the App Store and search for Filter Free Radio. That's all there is to it. No syncing, no taking up memory on your device. Just Filter Free Radio on demand for you on the go. Plus, you can rate and review Filter Free Radio on Stitcher. The more you rate, review, and share us, the higher we will rank on Stitcher, and that means the more people will discover Filter Free Radio. It's never been easier to enjoy Filter Free Radio and help us spread the word. So download the free Stitcher app, search for Filter Free Radio, and start benefiting from unfiltered radical truth-telling anytime, anywhere. Thanks, and keep up the good fight.
Joe had awakened to a world in crisis. The economy was in a state of deep neglect. A gray dust bowl had ravaged food supplies, and the #1 movie in the country was called Ass. And that's all it was for 90 minutes. It won 8 Oscars that year, including Best Screenplay. Some had high hopes that genetic engineering would correct this trend in evolution. But sadly, the greatest minds and resources were focused on conquering hair loss and prolonging erections.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Welcome back to Filter Free Radio, broadcasting live February 10th, 2014, live on filterfreeradio.com. We're live on radioornot.com and live on Liberal Justice Radio via the TuneIn app and TuneIn.com. However you may be joining us, thank you so much. We always enjoy and encourage participation in the program because democracy is a participatory sport, even though it shouldn't be considered a sport. Anyways, 503-746-TALK is our telephone number, 503-746-8255. Email Jacob at filterfreeradio, or we make it really easy. It's filterfreeradio.com. Tweet at filterfreeradio. All sorts of good stuff. Hey, to the folks in the chat room, in both chat rooms, which I'm hanging out in, I'm reading what you're saying. I don't have much time to, and I'm not the best at typing in the chat room and doing the show. And I have to, during the breaks now, I got to go check on our official puppy.
Come on.
You know? So, and by the way, she's ready for her 15 seconds of fame coming up here in about 30 minutes. I will tell you the name of the brand new puppy and the winner of the naming contest. So stay tuned. In the meantime, though, big serious things that happen in the biggest news story coming to us via Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, and the newly created First Look Media, firstlook.org, and The Intercept, a new digital online publication, theintercept.org. The new article published today titled The NSA's Secret Role in U.S. Assassination Program. They have a new source, and this drone operator who agreed to discuss the top secret programs on the condition of remaining anonymous was a member of JSOC's High-Value Targeting Task Force, which is charged with identifying, capturing, and killing terrorist suspects in Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. His account is bolstered by top-secret NSA documents previously provided by whistleblower Edward Snowden. It is also supported by a former drone sensor operator with the U.S. Air Force, Brandon Bryant, who has become an outspoken critic of the lethal operations in which he was directly involved in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen. And you can check out our video on the former drone operator Brandon Bryant speaking out on YouTube. It's our #1 most watched video. And in one tactic, the NSA geolocates, or basically like detects, where the SIM card or the handset of a suspected terrorist's cell phone, mobile phone, is. They track it, enabling the NSA tracks it, enabling the CIA and the U.S. military to conduct night raids, drone strikes, and essentially to kill or capture the individual in possession of that device. But who knows? Who's to say if the person in possession of the device was their target to begin with? There's really no way to know for sure, because they're doing it remote control. Hey, and this former JSOC drone operator is adamant that the technology has been responsible for taking out terrorists and networks of people facilitating improvised explosive device attacks against U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He also states that innocent people have absolutely been killed as a result of the NSA's increasing reliance on the surveillance tactic. Here, back to the man, Jeremy Scahill, on this morning's Democracy Now!, talking about this news source, who's remaining anonymous to the best of my knowledge up until still is anonymous. This news source, Jeremy Scahill, talking about the news source, how this news source confirms the documents that Edward Snowden previously leaked, and how the NSA plus the CIA equals killer drone spies.
Talking with this source, he was describing the architecture of this program, where the NSA is working closely with the CIA and with the Joint Special Operations Command, and then we were able to validate what he was saying through the documents that were previously provided by the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. Amy, the platform that the CIA is using in Yemen and other countries is known as Shenanigans. It's interesting because the NSA uses a lot of sort of Irish terminology, Blarney Stone and other Limerick, other operations. This one is called Shenanigans, and the platform that's used by the U.S. military is called Gilgamesh, or GMesh for short. And that's this technology where they're able to not only triangulate the position of SIM cards and cell phones, but the NSA also puts a device on the drones that are flying in various countries around the world, known as Air Handler. And the Air Handler device is literally just sucking up all of the data around the world. So it's sort of a secondary mission. In other words, in plain terms, what I'm saying is that every time a drone goes out in an effort to track someone or to kill someone, the NSA has put a device on that is not actually under the control of the CIA or the military. It is just sucking up data for the NSA. And as several former NSA people have told us, the NSA just wants all the data. They want to suck it up on an industrial scale. So they're also piggybacking onto these targeted killing operations in an effort to just suck up data throughout the world.
Did you hear that? That's the sound of the NSA sucking up that info on a massively...
That giant sucking sound.
I don't know. That's the best sucking.
I mean, it's just so... it's really just the overreach of a tyrant.
Right.
It's so surreal and completely unnecessary. I mean, you can't overemphasize the unnecessity of this behavior. We all know, and this is all, of course, post 9/11, as what they say. 9/11 changed everything. Yeah, it changed everything. It pretty much gave them an excuse to extinguish our democracy and rove all around the world and start killing people in the name of expanding our empire. God, empires always collapse from within. Yeah. And they do so because they extend, and spend all their money trying to expand this perpetual expansion of their empire to the detriment of everybody inside. And so here we are, most of us who, a good portion of us are unemployed or underemployed, and the middle class is evaporating, and we're all suffering as a result of this kind of wasteful, it's just insanity. Right. Insanity is really the best word for it. It's so frustrating. It's like, where's our jobs program, for crying out loud? Where's our health care guarantees, a right, not a privilege? Where's our First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights? I mean, let's face it. This whole drone concept and this whole notion of the NSA as their mission is to eviscerate the Fourth Amendment. There's no right to privacy. If there's no right to privacy, then there's no right to the Fifth Amendment, which is to self-incriminate. Prevention against self-incrimination. So you eliminate privacy, which means people can incriminate themselves. And again, there's also the elimination of free speech in there. And then, of course, you can't talk about it, which is another elimination of the First Amendment and journalism. I mean, it's tyranny. It's not a democracy. It's a tyrannical government.
Well, it sounds like it's about time to get a constitutional lawyer in here to say, wait a minute. Hold on here. There is a law. If we back up, of course, I'm trying to be funny with it. This is why we have Glenn Greenwald as a part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank God Glenn Greenwald is also a constitutional lawyer, which is just, unlike Obama.
Oh, this is what a real constitutional lawyer sounds like, son. I love it. This is from Democracy Now! This morning. From the same conversation, the same interview, the co-author of this new article over at theintercept.org, the NSA secret role in U.S. assassination program, Glenn Greenwald. And if you listen to that last clip we played of Jeremy Scahill, or if you read this article, any reasonable person might ask, well, is it even legal for you guys to be publishing this information? And I'm happy you asked, because Glenn has the answer from Democracy Now! This morning.
The position of the U.S. government is that it's illegal to publish any kind of classified information that you are not authorized to receive. It's, of course, illegal in their view for a government employee or contractor to leak it without authorization, but their view as well is that it's actually illegal even if you're a journalist to publish it. And they believe that's especially the case if the information pertains to what they call signals intelligence. And if you look at the Espionage Act of 1917 and other relevant statutes, it does seem to say that it is illegal in the United States to publish that kind of information. The problem for that view is that there's a superseding law called the Constitution, the First Amendment to which guarantees that there shall be a free press and that Congress and no other part of the government has the right to interfere with it. And one of the reasons why the government has been so reluctant about prosecuting journalists for publishing classified information, at least up until now, is because they're afraid that courts will say that application of this statute or the statutes that I've described to journalists is unconstitutional in violation of the First Amendment, and they want to keep that weapon to be able to threaten or bully or intimidate journalists out of doing the kind of reporting that they're doing.
But in other words, freedom of the press in the First Amendment is essentially the defense. And it's kind of an important defense because it's really all you got, right? right. And
well, we have to know why keep in mind, we're paying for this. This is where our tax dollars go. I mean, why are we paying for this when it doesn't do us any good, when it's really fundamentally anti-democratic and tyrannical, and, you know, the list is long of reasons why not. And yet, this is where our tax dollars go. People want to talk about governmental waste, fraud, and abuse, you know, and then they want to, you know, rail against, I don't know, welfare queens or whatever myth that's out there. This is your, waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, this is insanity. And to what end, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Trillions of dollars? Yeah, don't matter. Put it on a credit card. Actually, don't put it on a credit card. Just hide it and then wait till the next guy comes in and then just unload it and, hey, man, I got mine, so it's all good.
And in the meantime, silence dissent, suppress journalism, and I mean, let's face it, you know, it's the whole corporatization of our lives. It's, if you're not a yes man for the corporate state, if you're not dictating or just being a stenographer, if you will, of power, which is what the White House press corps and all the corporate media is, then if you're not doing it, if you're not following the script, well, then, you know, you will be persecuted. And I mean persecuted, if not obviously outright prosecuted. And so it's just, you know, it's hard to talk to people who still imbibe in the day-to-day of our corporate media, as if, you know, reading the newspaper. And I missed the opportunity of sitting down and physically reading the newspaper. I mean, that was actually nice, having morning coffee and a donut or whatever, and physically reading an actual hard copy newspaper is dead. You can't do it anymore, because if you do, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, unfortunately. And then, of course, watching the nightly news, there is no nightly news. There's more propaganda and fluff and irrelevant misinformation, disinformation, and junk thought. I mean, the propagation of just useless junk thought that's out there, whether it's about the Olympics or whether it's about any kind of other garbage that the media chooses to run as so-called news, is just overwhelming, and people can't keep all these things in their head. So, again, shutting out the poison of the corporate mainstream, so-called mainstream media is a really important first step to understanding what is going on in the world.
Yes. And if you've done that and you are now seeking out independent, alternative, radical, truth-telling media outlets that aren't afraid to tell the truth, I got nothing to lose. You might be saying, dude, you've been talking about the NSA now for like 7-8 months. I'm okay. I got it. NSA, bad. Spying, not good. Edward Snowden, hero. What? I mean, I'm tired of this NSA and can't you? I mean, what is the difference between this and the last 8 months? This, in Glenn Greenwald's words here, is why this is different from all of the previous NSA revelations, previous NSA stories, and this is why this story is so big. Pay attention to Glenn Greenwald here from Democracy Now! This morning.
Most of the stories that we've published thus far have been about the way in which the NSA collects signals intelligence, tries to intercept the electronic communications of hundreds of millions, probably billions of people around the world, hundreds of millions inside the United States. And that's what the U.S. government has told the American people is the role of the NSA, is to listen in on the communications of people who are threatening the United States in some manner. This story has very little to do with those prior stories in the sense that this is not a case of the NSA trying to collect people's communications to find who is plotting with whom or what kinds of plots they're engaged in. This is the NSA using a form of signals intelligence to first determine who should be targeted for assassination based on an analysis of their metadata. Has this person called what we think are bad people enough times for us to decide that they should die? And then secondly, trying to help the CIA and JSOC find those individuals who have been put on a list of basically assassination, but not by finding where they are, but by finding where their telephone is. A very obviously unreliable way of trying to kill people that is certain to result in the death of innocent people. And obviously the source who came forward has said that that's exactly what has happened. So it's really an incredibly expanded role that we're revealing that the NSA engages in far beyond what traditionally the American people are told about why this agency exists.
Not only is that freaking awesome and brilliant, but don't you just love the way he says it? It really rings home. And I love his delivery on most things. It's the perfect amount of sarcasm. You know, it's like
he's snarky. I like his snarkiness.
It's good. It's good. It makes you go, yeah, that is kind of a bad way to try to kill people, you know?
Yeah, you think as if there's a good way to kill people.
Right, exactly. Thank you for clarifying.
He's witty and snarky. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it's just remarkable. And God, where would we be without these guys? I mean, seriously, what would we be talking about if we didn't have these revelations? If Edward Snowden hadn't come forward? And you know, of course, the myth in the popular zeitgeist, or at least what they want you to believe, is that Edward Snowden gave information to the Russians or the Chinese or whatever, when in fact he gave all of his information to Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, and then left. And so, if anything, I can't believe that the NSA hasn't killed Glenn Greenwald yet, much less how Jeremy Scahill is allowed to still live in the United States without being arrested. And I say that now, tongue in cheek, but I fear for these people's, well-being. Yeah. I mean, I just obviously they are the ones who are railing against the system, and they're the only ones. And so everyone else is scared to death to do it if they do have any kind of impetus for it. And in fact, there's a certain amount, of my own psyche that says doing this radio show is fine up until such a point as we reach a critical mass and become a threat to the status quo.
Right. I mean, I was on Talking Left with Shano and Danielle yesterday morning, and shout out to them, talkingleft.com. It's carried on We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., and we were talking about kind of the electoral process, about activism, about all sorts of things. And the conversation got around to the point of, well, I mean, is Obama doing enough? Why isn't he doing enough? And I've said this on this show before, that I believe that, of course, there's money involved, there's politics involved, it's all political theater. But somewhere in the back of my mind, and I'm sure in the back of Obama's mind, when you're getting more legitimate death threats than any other previous president in the history of the United States, that's got to sit somewhere in the back of your mind. And if my life, didn't mean to whack the microphone there, if my life was threatened to that extent on a daily basis, you bet your ass I'd be taking a different tone myself, because, I mean, that's kind of like a no-brainer, right? So, yeah, I mean,
assuming that our government is there to serve the will of the masses, the will of the people, which is at this point a broad assertion. It's the whole idea that what people say they did with Bill Clinton or what they did with Obama is, once they get elected, they sit them down, the NSA and the guys at the Pentagon sit them down and show them the Kennedy tapes and say, this will happen to you if you cross us. Because I mean, it's a well-held belief that the CIA killed Kennedy, and it's, I guess if you just read Tom Hartman's books and stuff like that, there's much vindication for that theory. Nevertheless, the whole thing is, if you don't do as we say, we'll kill you.
Yeah.
And that's the whole premise of does our elected officials serve power? I mean, who do they really serve? It's clearly not you and me.
Yeah. Well, when the person who raises the most money wins 95% of the time, clearly they serve the interest of the campaign funders, first and foremost, because they serve themselves first and foremost. And
I mean, at the very least, these guys want to know that when they leave office, they'll be handsomely rewarded by the corporate state and speaking fees. I mean, Bill Clinton's made what? I think $8 million or $80 million. It's an insane amount of money he's made just in speaking fees since he's left office. I mean, he was not a multimillionaire when he was elected president. He's a multimillionaire now.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. We can go on, man. It's good to have you back, Scott. Man, it's been a couple of weeks and I miss it. But before we run to a short break at the top of the hour, just to kind of put a punctuation, and we'll wrap up the conversation we've been having this hour. I'm going to tell you right now, theintercept.org, firstlook.org are my two new must-read on a daily basis bookmarks. I suggest you check it out. Follow them on the Twitter. You already love Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, and they got a whole list of other awesome radical truth-telling journalists who are, they're not... it's like you work for The Guardian and they don't even want you to publish them. So I was like, oh, I got to go do it. I can't hold back. I mean, it would be a disservice not to tell the people this is what's going on. And you should be concerned about it, they've got this news source who was on the inside of the CIA and the NSA. And this guy's talking about how targets are increasingly aware of the NSA's reliance on geolocating and that they have moved to thwart that tactic. Now these suspected so-called terrorists have like 15 different SIM cards associated with their identity in this, NSA's high-value target system or CIA system, and others unaware that the mobile phone is being targeted. They lend their phone with a SIM card in it to friends or children, spouses, family members. And you have, some Taliban leaders, knowing this, have purposely randomly distributed SIM cards among their units. They're trying to elude their trackers. They go to, and this is this news source that they're quoting in this article. They would do things like go to meetings, take out their SIM cards, put them in a bag, mix them up. Everyone gets a different SIM card when they leave. This is how they confuse.
It's like Russian roulette, man.
And it's like nothing new. It's not rocket science. And as a result, even when the agency correctly identifies a SIM card belonging to a terror suspect, the phone can actually be carried by someone else, who is then killed in a strike. According to this former drone operator, geolocation cells at the NSA that run the tracking program known as GeoCell sometimes facilitate strikes without knowing whether the individual in possession of a tracked cell phone or SIM card is in fact the intended target of the strike. I'm just saying, this bothers me a little bit. And
well, that's the fallacy. That's the whole fallacy that Edward Snowden has compromised our national security, as if our wars in Pakistan, Yemen, Afghanistan, Somalia, fill in the blank, right, are not in and of itself compromised our national security. I mean, it's not Edward Snowden; it's our foreign policy that is compromising our national security. And so Edward Snowden is just shining a light on the corruption of our foreign policy, and they'll of course turn their ire towards him rather than critically assess what we're actually doing to cause this so-called threat to our national security. I mean, it's just this vicious cycle,
Give me a break, right? Speaking of break, it's the top of the hour. Let's take a short break. And I tell you, the best part about it is there's like still 2/3 of that article that we never even got into. So you should go read that article over at theintercept.org by Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald. Super great stuff. I hope you find that media outlet as useful as I do. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, the moment that some of you have been tuning in and waiting for, we're going to name the new puppy, announce the winner of the puppy naming contest, and then, of course, we're going to talk about social movements, how we do them, how we create them, how we maintain them, some real good stuff. Also, coming up next, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey friends, Jacob Dean here with exciting news. You can now hear my show, Filter Free Radio, on the free Stitcher mobile app. Just download the free Stitcher app from Stitcher.com or in the App Store and search for Filter Free Radio. That's all there is to it. No syncing, no taking up memory on your device. Just Filter Free Radio on demand for you on the go. Plus, you can rate and review Filter Free Radio on Stitcher. The more you rate, review, and share us, the higher we will rank on Stitcher, and that means the more people will discover Filter Free Radio. It's never been easier to enjoy Filter Free Radio and help us spread the word. So download the free Stitcher app, search for Filter Free Radio, and start benefiting from unfiltered radical truth-telling anytime, anywhere. Thanks, and keep up the good fight.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And this is part of the capitalist society. I mean, let's face it, our culture has been taken over by corporate America. We have a corporate culture. Become our brands, buy our products. You're worthless unless you wear this outfit or drive this car, and you are our brand. It's a form of slavery, really. And it's a form of losing one's self-identity because you become their brand. You identify with this corporate product. It's a cult-like mentality. So what we have to regain is this individuality, not the selfish individualism that we have now, which is based around material wealth and material possessions, but the individual thought.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And then coming together collectively, of course, to form these sort of resistance movements and these support mechanisms. And we need, of course, to also put pressure on the systems of power so that they do what is right, that they actually do the will of the people.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Tune in to Liberal Justice Radio on the TuneIn app and TuneIn.com.
Hi, this is Kenny Pick, founder of Liberal Justice Radio, and I wanted to take a few minutes to let you know about our schedule here. First and foremost, on Mondays, you can check out Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott on Filter Free Radio, live from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Jacob and Scott give you unfiltered news, opinion, and analysis on stories that the mainstream media won't touch with a 10-foot pole. It's a fantastic show that you won't want to miss. Then on Tuesdays, there's my show, Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick. I have many co-hosts, Tom, Deba, Matt, Kim, and Pete on Tuesdays. That's 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. We have lots of laughs. We talk about politics. We talk about news. We talk about all kinds of stuff. You'll love it. We also have a Friday show, but we'll get to that momentarily. We're proud to announce that we have a brand new addition to our live family, and that's the Bradcast, of course, hosted by the world-renowned Brad Friedman of the Brad blog and the Green News Report. And we're very happy to have him on from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. Then Thursdays, well, everybody gets the night off for good behavior. Then Friday comes back around, and yeah, that's right, Turn Up the Night is back. It's me, Tom, Deba, and Matt back for more fun. And again, that's Fridays live from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Then Saturdays, from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have my good friend Adam Hebert with Mic Check Radio. You can check out him and his hosts, Rob and Wes. They talk politics, they talk geek culture, they talk science, and again, lots of laughs from those guys too. And again, that's Saturdays from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. That's when the shows are live. We encourage you to listen 24 hours a day if you humanly can. We would love that. That's Filter Free Radio, live every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick, live from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, the Bradcast, live from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Thursdays, we're off. Fridays, we're back with more Turn Up the Night from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And then on Saturdays, it's Mic Check Radio, live from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Nothing yet on Sunday, but you never know. We might throw a curveball. So please enjoy our live shows and the recent rebroadcasts that we run 24/7. And find out how to get in touch with us. Let us know how you're listening to Liberal Justice Radio and what you think of the programming and what you'd like to hear more of.
Liberal Justice Radio on the TuneIn app and TuneIn.com.
Hi, friends. This is Tom Hartman.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks.
I'm Brad Friedman. I approve of Nicole Sandler's RadioOrNot.com.
Radio or Not.
Radio or Not.
RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
Looking for filters? Check your coffee maker. This is Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. FilterFreeRadio.com. Get ready to suck down some grounds.
When I talk about resistance, I think we have to stand up now and carry out acts of nonviolent resistance.
Because the truth is, we do have power.
We live in revolutionary times, but the counter-revolution is winning.
Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
Live Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. FilterFreeRadio.com.
This is my favorite show.
We have been given an opportunity to make a new beginning.
And I think it's very important for us to start to build a culture of resistance because what we're doing isn't working, clearly.
It's our job to very coldly assess reality and then figure out how to respond.
Your number one source for unfiltered truth, analysis, and solutions. FilterFreeRadio.com.
Welcome back to the second hour of the show. We are broadcasting live. It is February 10th, 2014, live on FilterFreeRadio.com, RadioOrNot.com, live on Liberal Justice Radio via the TuneIn app. However you may be joining us, thank you so much. The moment that folks have been waiting for, this cutie little baby bear has a new name. Yes, I'm going to break the monotony for just another minute. If you tuned in to last week's program, episode number 104, you know that I got a new puppy. Here she is, the little chocolate lab. And we held a puppy naming contest on our website at filterfreeradio.com. I had so many suggestions sent in that at one point I wanted to read all of them on the air. I can't read them all on the air. I've got over 40, 50 of them, I think, somewhere around there. And it was for the winner. If we chose your name suggestion, I was going to give you an autographed Filter Free Radio bumper sticker, and it is my pleasure to announce that the winning name, this little baby's name, is Joy. J-O-Y, Joy. And I love it, and she loves it. And the name comes to us from a Portland listener, Darlene. Darlene emailed in the name Joy. She mentions, I know that you said you like J names, and I figured that the new puppy is going to bring you lots of joy. You seem to be very happy about it, and I thought Joy would be a perfect name. I love it. It is a perfect name. She is a little bundle of joy. She's a sweetheart. I love the name. It works. She likes it, I think. When they say, hi, Joy, say, hi, baby. She said, thank you, Darlene, for my name. And we're going to send you this an autographed filter-free radio bumper sticker. And now everyone knows the official puppy of Filter Free Radio's name is Joy. I can still call her my little Joy Bear. And, Fang was a good idea. We were thinking Fang or Terrorizer or Bearizer or something. Joy. If I could get the puppy sitter handlers help at the minute, it would be great and perfect timing. I can't do the show without the help of everyone involved, and one of the key people involved is the official puppy sitter, JD Fishin, who's one of our awesome chat room members, and my dad. And the show literally would not be possible if it was not for my dad puppy sitting.
Really? Dog takes up that much of your time?
Here we go. Thank you. Good girl. Yes, it does, Scott. Yes, it does.
Okay. Boy, isn't that just cute?
Okay. So, Darlene, I am going to autograph one of these super cool Filter Free Radio bumper stickers. I'm going to send you an email and send that out to you. I tell you, someone out there, if you really want a Filter Free Radio bumper sticker, I'll just give you one. Send me an email and tell me why you love the show. Tell me why you need a Filter Free Radio bumper sticker, and I will send you one. But then I've got to talk about it on the show. That's how it works. So, okay. And then Scott saying, dude, okay, come on, man. Can you get to the show, right?
Yeah, that's cute and all, but we're living under a tyranny, so you got something better than that?
Yeah, right. Well, I tell you, you missed a great last week's episode, man. We talked puppies for an hour.
Oh my God.
This right here, I'm going to put this picture up on the screen there, and we're going to dive into it because hopefully we'll have enough time in 50 minutes to finish what I hope to accomplish here. And this, we posted a link to it on our Facebook page. I absolutely think this is the most important piece of reading material anyone can get their hands on right now if they're with what we're with, if you're tired of the status quo, if you're looking for social movements for social justice to participate in, there is a plan.
Social justice. God, what a neat word.
There is a plan. It is called the Movement Action Plan, a strategic framework describing the 8 stages of successful social movements, written by this man, Bill Moyer, in 1987. Not to be confused with Bill Moyers' Journal or Moyers and Company. Not that Bill Moyers, but Bill Moyer, who actually, this Bill Moyer passed away in 2002. And I showed you a picture there on the if you're watching the video broadcast, there's a picture of Bill. He's an author of Doing Democracy. Bill Moyer was an organizer, a writer, trainer, and a strategist with a wide range of social movements for over 25 years. As I mentioned, he passed away in 2002. His experience includes work with civil rights, anti-Vietnam, anti-nuclear energy and weapons, European nuclear disarmament, non-intervention in Central American movements. He was staff with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's Poor People's Campaign. He was the director of American Friends Service Committee Chicago Open House Program, a national nonviolence trainer and co-founder of the Movement for a New Society and its Philadelphia Life Center. And I am,
some good credentials.
Going to admit my ignorance. I'd never heard of this Bill Moyer until a month ago when I found this article. And
where'd you find the article?
History is a Weapon is the name of the website that I found it in, and it was tweeted out. But we had done an article a while back from Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers, and they were referencing this article in their article. I was like, oh, I wonder what that original article talked about and what that original article said. And I read it. It's 30 pages, 35 pages long, but it's a must read. And it is perfect. And I posted a link to it at Facebook, and I want to read from this. The beginning is essentially an introduction from Bill. He says, the United States I'm going to do this word right, nuclear,
there you go.
The United States anti-nuclear energy movement was launched in the spring of 1977 when 1,400 Clamshell Alliance activists occupied the Seabrook nuclear power site and spent the next 12 days in jail. Anybody remember that? I wasn't around then. During those 2 weeks, nuclear energy became a worldwide public issue as the mass media spotlight focused on the activists locked in jail throughout New Hampshire. Support demonstrations popped up all across the United States, and within a couple of months, hundreds of new grassroots anti-nuclear energy direct action groups were started. They had created a new nationwide uprising against nuclear energy, the powerful nuclear energy industry, and the national government's goal of 1,000 nuclear power plants by the turn of that century. Until then, nuclear power had the public's approval and had not been a social issue. Sounds kind of familiar, like maybe wealth inequality issue and Occupy movement. By the way, this article was written in 1987. Almost 30 years ago. So you can just as easily replace any of the anti-nuclear activism with Occupy movement activism, and it's essentially the same exact thing, minus the carry through on the success part, right? Bill Moyer writes, he goes on to write that on a Friday night, I expected to meet a spirited, upbeat group that was proud of its accomplishments, talking about the clamshell organizations and the activism. And he was shocked when the clamshell activist arrives with heads bowed. They were dispirited. They were depressed, saying that their efforts had been in vain. After 2 years of hard effort, they were burnt out. Their movement was not a success, and people were burnt out. People were dropping out. Others spoke of the need for increased militant action, even violent action. None believed that they could rally even a fraction of the thousands of people that they thought were necessary to stop nuclear energy through the upcoming civil disobedience blockade at Seabrook in the spring. This is Bill Moyer writing, I wondered how I could convince these activists in my scheduled talk in the next morning that they were extremely successful and considered national heroes by many people in the new movement. I stayed up most of that night creating a framework now called the Movement Action Plan, MAP, that describes stages that successful social movements go through. I presented that model in the next morning, explaining how, led by Clamshell, a new movement was created, how in 1 year it had achieved most of the goals of Stage 4, and how it was about to move on to the next stage, Stage 5, which is majority opposition. I'm going to explain what all 8 stages are in a minute. The stages framework helped empower many of the clamshell activists and helped them create a new strategy. And he goes on to talk about the clamshell experience of discouragement and collapse is far from unusual. Within a few years after achieving the goals of the takeoff, every major social movement of the past 20 years has undergone a significant collapse in which activists believe that their movement has failed, the power institutions are too powerful, and that their own efforts do not matter. This has happened even when movements are actually progressing reasonably along the normal path taken by successful movements. And this is exactly what has happened to the Occupy Wall Street movement. The Movement Action Plan was first published in the fall of 1986 and has been revised, and I'm reading from the revised version from 1987, which you can find at historyisaweapon.org. There's a link to it at Facebook, Filter Free Radio. Facebook.com/Filter Free Radio. There we go. Okay. And coming up, it's Unplugged Nukes Day, right? So there you go. Social movements, and we're talking about social movements here, because that's where the hope lies, is in activism in the social movements. Social movements are collective actions in which the populace is alerted, educated, mobilized over years and decades to challenge the powers that be and the whole society to redress social problems or grievances and restore critical social values. That is, this is the mission statement of this program. By involving the populace directly in the political process, social movements also foster the concept of government of, by, and for we the people. The power of movements is directly proportional to the forcefulness with which the grassroots exert their discontent and demand change. If you get active, the change will happen. The central issue of social movements, therefore, is the struggle between the movement and the power holders to win hearts, sympathies, minds, public opinion, and active support of the great majority of the populace, which ultimately holds the power to either preserve the status quo or create change. In other words, the people have the power. There needs to be a revival of democracy through people power, and the increasingly centralized power of the state and other social institutions combined with the new use of the mass media to carry out the political process has all but eliminated effective citizen participation in the decision-making process. Centralized power holders now make decisions in the interest of a small minority, themselves and their campaign funders, and it's all about the money, while at the same time completely undermining the common good and aggravating critical social problems.
Wow. Are you reading that verbatim?
Yes.
Because that sounds like it was written today.
Right? This is written in 1987.
Well, the sad thing about that comment is that it's gotten worse and not better. And I mean, the same thing could be said today in so many aspects. I mean, the concentration of power and the glorification of ignorance is why we are in this situation today. And yet, they've eviscerated our movements. I mean, we don't have movements. We don't have anything. I mean, that's when people want to complain about corruption in government and if Obama and if. But the fact of the matter is, nothing's changed since the '60s. And we haven't had any movements since the '60s, not of any significance, and there's a lot of good reasons why that's true. But moreover, we don't know our history, and those movements have been eviscerated by the powers that be, starting with the assassination of Kennedy and JFK and others. MLK and others. And so where are we? We're just lost in the woods in what is otherwise inverted totalitarianism or neo-feudalism or just straight-out tyranny of the military state. It's just remarkable that you hear and you read these things from decades, and even I've read some things from the 30s and 20s, and it's just as true today, as it was then. There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, the struggle is always there, and it's why it's called a struggle, because it never ends.
Right. And there's a way to break the cycle, to break the hopelessness. And like you said, Scott, it's not rocket science. The answer's been in front of us all along. The single most powerful force on the planet Earth is the people united. The people have the power. The power ultimately resides with the people. History is full of those examples of inspired citizens involving themselves, taking that initiative to get involved in the social movements that achieve social and political change. They topple tyrannical governments. They topple dictatorships. They can topple the corporate state today. And the power holders, the powers to be, know this. They know that their power depends on the support of we the people. And that's
even just the passive support, the passive allowing, by not doing anything, allows this stuff to continue. And that's why once the people withdraw their passive or even active support of this kind of systems, well, that's when this kind of tyranny crumbles, and that's when these people lose their power. But I mean, if we're going to sit there in front of the tube every night and go, oh man, the Democrats are good, Republicans are bad, or whatever, it's just a show game, and not actually do something about it and get active. Well, then they win, and that's what they want. That's why we have such vast systems of propaganda, because nothing greater than a passive and ignorant populace that does not resist this kind of, tyranny and fascism are just the two most concise words I can think of.
Right. And we all agree that we need movements, right? We need movements, and those movements need a strategic framework. They need a plan, a short-term plan and a long-term plan, which was the fallout of the Occupy movement, the long-term plan, how they move to the next stage, right? The lack of a practical analytical model which describes the long process normally taken by successful social movements disempowers activists and limits the effectiveness of their movements. Without the guiding framework that explains step-by-step process that social movements go through, many activists are unable to identify successes that they have already achieved. They've set long and short-term goals, confidently develop strategies, tactics, programs, and avoid common pitfalls. Many experienced activists are what they call take-off junkies. They only know how to create the new social movement and how to initiate that process, but they don't know how to transition and wage a long-term movement that progresses throughout a series of successful stages and actually create positive change. Within 2 years after an initial takeoff, most activists think the movement's failed and they give up and they think that what they're doing doesn't matter. They get burnt out, they drop out, and you see the dissipation of the movements. And I'm speaking from personal experience with the Occupy Wall Street movement. For the first 2 years, man, that was all we talked about and all we were doing. And then it's just kind of like, well, that didn't work. Now what, right?
Yeah, it was a big letdown. I mean, it's the whole roller coaster ride. Things were going great. Everything was like, yes, this is the beginning of something, and then it was crushed. And there's various ways in which it collapsed, but most presciently was by, removing the actual Occupy itself across the country in various cities by our democratically elected constitutional scholar, lawyer, president, in a coordinated effort to suppress this kind of dissent, which as they recognized was was a threat to them. And then once that happened, and once things just collapsed from within, in addition to the various ways it was infiltrated, as well as the fact that general assemblies don't really work when you have a couple thousand people. So the whole infrastructure itself just collapsed. And that's just one small example. And then what happened was, where are we now? We're just, we had no fallback plan. We had no infrastructure in place to continue this kind of activism without an actual having a physical location. Right. So what are we going to do, man?
And the other thing is we did not understand each stage of a successful movement, what each stage of the movement looks like, and we weren't able to correctly identify the fact that the movement was a complete success and actually never died off until we stopped participating. And this is what the movement action plan and what Bill Moyer wrote about and talks about and describes in these 8 stages through which these social movements normally progress over a period of years, decades. And he talks about, for each state, the movement action plan describes the role of the power holders, the powers that be, and of the movement. And it provides organizers with a map of a long road of successful movements. I'll show you that map on the screen, which helps them guide their movement along the way. And now, of course, social movements do not fit neatly into the 8 stages, nor do they move through the 8 stages in a linear fashion. Social movements are dynamic. Movements have a number of different demands, and each demand is different, has a different stage. When the movements achieve one demand, they focus on achieving other demands that are at earlier stages possibly. And this is only a theoretical model built from past experiences. Real-life social movements will not actually fit exactly into these stages linearly, smoothly, precisely in the manner that we're outlining here. But the purpose of this is to give activists hope and empowerment and to increase the effectiveness of social movements and to reduce the discouragement that often contributes to individual burnout, dropout, and the winding down of social movements. And with that said, we've got to take a real short break here at the bottom of the hour. And when we come back, we are going to get into it. We're going to break down the 2 views of power, the movement's source of power, social movements versus the powers that be, the powers to be strategy, the movement strategy, and every single one of the 8 stages of successful movements. We're going to get into it. The next segment's going to be good. You don't want to go anywhere. Filter Free Radio live, filterfreeradio.com. We will be right back.
We need a movement of truth tellers.
The kind of progressive grassroots movement.
A social movement that they can engage in that's not the politics of hatred, that's not the politics of fear, but the politics of hope.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
There's 2 ways to approach history. You sit in your armchair and you watch it on the news and you return to your PlayStation, or you get out in the streets and you make it.
They can push the rest of us to wake up and do something about this. People need to rise up and say, I'm sick of this.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Seeing themselves as a huge movement to transform the nation.
The change that we want comes from below. It comes from a movement.
The American people can and will find ways to push for the kinds of changes that can get us out of this dilemma.
I want to see that change, and it's going to take people here in this country to be able to make that happen.
Filter Free Radio.
FilterFreeRadio.com. Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
If you look around with peak oil, with climate change, with all the natural disasters,
writings on the wall.
Yeah, they know better than even you and I know what the worst case scenario is, and so they're preparing for it. Rather than responding rationally, the power elites will not respond rationally to the climate catastrophe. Is one of the most daunting challenges we have to grasp, because it's up to us. They will do whatever they can to protect themselves, and they don't represent us. And it's the whole co-opting of, oh, you too can be rich if you just work hard enough. Well, we're not going to be rich. You never can be rich. Even if you did become rich, you won't ever be wealthy. And wealth is something totally different.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And wealthy is what controls a society. It controls the world. And so we have to bring pressure to bear on the wealthy.
Yeah.
And then you start talking about, how do we do that? Well, you shut down their systems of power. You stop giving them money. You force them to listen.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
We got no plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. I want to take a second to show you a real video of villagers throwing rocks at a drone aircraft that has crashed to the ground in Afghanistan. Here it is. After seeing that video, I imagine you're having the same thought I did, which is, how sick, how repulsive, how terrible for those villagers to beat a defenseless little drone. That drone was just minding his business, just doing his job of patrolling the skies, looking for terrorists to bomb, looking for people who look like terrorists to bomb, or people who walk a little like a terrorist, or family members of someone who expressed interest in a group that once expressed interest in donating money to a group that expressed interest in terrorism. That's all he was doing. And then obviously that drone's day got worse because he crashed to the ground. And then did the villagers go up and help him? Did they? Did they show a little common decency? No. They beat him with rocks. Not Nerf rocks, not rock candy. Those were real rocks. That is a hate crime, all right? And I don't think we should stand for it. You see, there's a way to create true, real terrorists. There's a recipe. There's a cookbook that Paula Deen used to pull from. That recipe is to take 1 part poor people, then you take 2 parts giant militarized planes flying over their heads at all hours. You put in a sprinkling of death to their friends and family. By the way, this recipe calls for no judge, no jury, no statement of charges, no way for them to plead their case, no way for them to avoid possible death from above, and also no paprika. Don't use paprika. So you take all those ingredients, you stir them up a little, and you put them into the desert, and you let it bake for about 5, maybe 10 years, and voila! You have yourself thousands, if not tens of thousands, of brand new terrorists. Jamie Oliver and Rachel Ray would be jealous. Look, I'm not saying I like this recipe. In fact, I hate this recipe. But I'm just telling you, our military seems to love this recipe. And it works every fucking time. That's been your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. If you think this video is important, I hope you forward it to friends and post it wherever you want. The music here at the end is by Types and Strange Flow. I'll have a link to their album in the description. Keep fighting.
Not alone, we fighting to keep our homes while companies do us wrong through policy of a loan. We in the war zone and they buying predator drones and want us to sit at home at all watching the throne. Politicians trying to tell you what they ain't got. The government and big banks in the same pot.
Hey friends, Jacob Dean here with exciting news. You can now hear my show, Filter Free Radio, on the free Stitcher mobile app. Just download the free Stitcher app from Stitcher.com or in the App Store and search for Filter Free Radio. That's all there is to it. No syncing, no taking up memory on your device. Just Filter Free Radio on demand for you on the go. Plus, you can rate and review Filter Free Radio on Stitcher. The more you rate, review, and share us, the higher we will rank on Stitcher, and that means the more people will discover Filter Free Radio. It's never been easier to enjoy Filter Free Radio and help us spread the word. So download the free Stitcher app, search for Filter Free Radio, and start benefiting from unfiltered radical truth-telling anytime, anywhere. Thanks, and keep up the good fight.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, for our next attraction, Butthead, come here quick.
You're listening to Jacob Dean.
Now that's no way for a kid to be wasting his time reading that long-haired gobbledygook.
Welcome back to the show. We are in the middle of the Movement Action Plan, a strategic framework describing the 8 stages of successful social movements by Bill Moyer, written in 1986, revised in 1987. There is a link to it at facebook.com/filterfreeradio. We're talking about not only the need, our show is dedicated essentially to the need of social movements and social activism, but this really breaks down how a successful social movement is created and maintained all the way through to success. And it starts with the two views of power that many activists simultaneously hold in their minds, two contrasting models of power, that is, the power elite and the people power. And each of these views, however, leads to opposite movement strategies and target constituencies. The elites, through their dominant control of the state institutions, laws, myths, traditions, and social norms, serve the interest of the elites. They only want more for themselves, often to the disadvantage of everybody else. And power flows from top to bottom. And since people are powerless, social change can be achieved only by appealing to the elites at the top to change their policies through normal channels and institutions, such as, the electoral process, lobbying Congress, and the use of the courts, traditional methods, right, that have worked forever because, they keep working when the system wasn't as corrupt and as bad as it is now. Sure, it's going to work now. And the target constituency is the powers to be thinking, we're going to appeal to some sort of better nature of these people, which we got to flush that idea down the crapper quickly, and convincing existing powers to be to change their view. Good chance. Or electing a new power to be that's going to do the right thing. Maybe Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein is a good start, but the chief opposition organizations are professional opposition organizations. They have national offices in Washington, D.C., regional offices around the country, and they think, we just maintain the traditional routes of change. Ain't going to happen.
The irony there is that the traditional routes of change have been movements. We just have been told otherwise.
Right, exactly. Thank you. That's so important, man, because you're right. It is the movements that make the change. It is the people power that makes the change. And the people power model that holds the power ultimately resides in the mass in the mass populace. Even in societies with strong power elites, such as here in the United States, the powers to be power is dependent on the cooperation, the support of we the people. This model is represented, think of an inverse triangle, the people at the top, the power elite at the bottom, which is really how it works. And people power is the model used by social movements. The movement strategy is not only to use normal channels in an effort to persuade power holders, but to change their minds, but also to alert, educate, and mobilize a disconnected, impassioned, and determined grassroots population using nonviolent means beyond the normal preliminary method institutions. What? People power, man. People power. Get active.
Yeah, that's the whole Gene Sharp. I love Gene Sharp, by the way.
Yes. And then it talks about the movement. Where does the movement's power come from? Very simple. The source of power of social movements lies in two human qualities: a strong sense of right and wrong. You and I have a very deeply felt belief, our value system, our morals, which we just, it's in there, right? Right and wrong. We know the difference between right and wrong, right? And we react with extreme passion and determination whenever we realize that our values are compromised, our morals are violated. That is one source of power of social movements. The other is we understand the world and reality in large part through symbolism. It is a symbolic world we live in. It's no longer a print society, it's an image-based society. And social movements need to derive their power from an upset, impassioned, motivated populace set into motion. And this happens when people recognize that their strongly felt beliefs, their values, our morals, our interests are unjustly violated, and the population, we the people, provided with hope that change can happen and a means for them to act. People are especially aroused to action when trusted public leaders, such as the president or the representatives, violate the public trust to carry out their duties of office in an honest and lawful manner. That is where the movement's power comes from.
You said duty.
You said duty. And then, so it's the social movement versus the powers to be, right? The process of achieving social change through social movements is the struggle between the movement and the powers to be, the power holders of the hearts, the minds, the support of the general public. And the powers to be advocate policies that are to the advantage of society's elites, but often to the disadvantage of everyone else, the majority of the population, and in violation of strongly held values. This is exactly what's going on. We know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. Right?
I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want an educated populace to sit around a kitchen table and realize how badly they've been fucked by a system who threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. Sorry, I love George Carlin.
Exactly, yes. And
that's the whole thing. They just want people, they want obedient workers. People just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept the evisceration of our democracy.
Exactly. And so there's the other side to this. That's kind of like where the movement strategy is coming from. But how often do we think that we can appeal to the powers to be and never take into account that the powers to be actually have their own strategy, that, they say one thing and completely do another? The powers to be maintain their power and the status quo by hiding their moral violations of the social conditions by their policies through these following strategies. The first line of defense is of bureaucratic management. They prevent the issue from ever becoming an issue, right? They silence us. They control the media. They got you by the balls, right? Some of the means used by the power holders to achieve this strategy are: they maintain complete control of the information available to the public through the media. They deny that the problem exists. They create the myth to define that the problem for the public is exactly the opposite of reality. backwards world. They create the threat of demons such as, oh, terrorism, be afraid of the terrorism, right? And after a policy becomes a public issue, the powers to be are forced to switch to crisis management, a strategy by essentially vindicating unjust policies through justification myths, re-emphasizing old demons, creating new demons, creating trigger events to justify a new policy to get public consent, and to overcome public opposition by first ignoring them, discrediting them, de-establishing them, and if necessary, repressing the movement, which is exactly what we saw happen to the Occupy movement. The powers to be got scared and they shut the thing down, right? Well, that's the strategy of the powers to be, and we clearly see that strategy in play. We've got to focus on what is the strategy of the movement. The movement's aim is to educate and win over. This is the purpose of social movements, and this is the purpose of filter-free radio. If I could put it in one sentence, this is it. The movement's aim is to educate and win over an increasingly larger majority of the public and to mobilize the majority public into an effective force that brings about social change. Movements need to be grounded in the strongly felt, widely held, right and wrong human and cultural values, the symbols, our sensibilities, the traditions of the general population, such as freedom, democracy, justice, human rights. It's not just Republican buzzwords either, right? Only by showing the public that the movement upholds these values, that the power holders who violate them, can the population be won over and stirred to the level of passion required for them to act. In contrast, movement activities and attitudes that violate the society's values and sensibilities, like acts of violence, have the opposite effect and turn both the public and many other activists away from the movement. This is why nonviolence is the only way. I
mean that's the emphasis. If I can be a tangential a little bit here. Well, it's just the whole notion of why we need militant nonviolence, right. And that is because nobody knows how corrupt the system is more than the bureaucrats, who are just cogs in the wheel of it. Whether it be the rank and file policeman or the bureaucrat in some federal agency who's pushing papers and who sees and who's painfully exposed to on a day-to-day basis the actual rank hypocrisy and corruption in these things. And so the way you galvanize movements and the way you're able to actually get enough people to step outside of their comfort zone and to actually resist the status quo and the so-called way things are, right? The way you get people to join you and resist is to give them a safe environment, and that's what made the Occupy so dangerous, and to give them a nonviolent setting in which they can express their disconcern or their concerns along with everybody else. And so, if you are suddenly violent, then obviously they don't feel safe, and you will be ridiculed. Not only does violence give the state reason to squash you in the most more violent way than you could possibly imagine. Let's face it, this whole NRA, these people with their guns and stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, the military will just crush you, obviously. Look at David Koresh as an example. And it's a bad example, but the point is that you do not have the might that the people we go against have. And so nonviolence and being transparency are the weapons. I mean, nonviolence is actually a weapon. Yep. Because once they kill you, for being nonviolent, and for telling the truth, then they themselves discredit themselves, and it ends up being self-defeating. And that's why this whole war on terror is becoming so cyclical, and they're in fact creating more terrorists than they are eliminating because of the violence that they use.
Boom, shakalaka. Nailed it, right? I love it. That is totally it. Nonviolence and transparency are the only two weapons you need, period. And so back into the movement action plan. I'm going to get to all 8 stages. What are the 8 stages of successful movements right after this? But first, the social movement needs a strategy, and it needs to accomplish. It needs goals that it needs to accomplish. It needs to set these goals. And this is part of the problem with like the Occupy movement, we didn't have that long-term goal or set of short-term goals with a long-term goal. And here is exactly what the movement needs to accomplish, the strategy needs to accomplish. Publicly, we have to show that the social conditions and the powers to be policies violate our values, violate our traditions and self-interests of the general public. This includes publicly revealing the difference between official and operative policies and doctrines. We have to keep the issue and moral violations in the public spotlight and on society's agenda of hotly contested issues. Keep the issue and the powers to be's policies on society's political agenda. Counter the power holders' social myth and justification and denials that the problem exists. Counter the power holders' demonology. For example, why do we have terrorists that hate America? Probably because we keep blowing them up with bombs and now drones. We have to involve increasingly larger numbers of people, of the public, in programs that directly challenge the powers to be's policies and promote alternative visions and programs. Don't compromise. And after a large majority of public opinion is won, have an end game strategy that mobilizes the people and institutions to create change. Despite the determined opposition of the central powers to be, finally, the movements, organizations, and leadership, especially at the national and regional levels, should serve, nurture, and empower the grassroots activists and promote participatory democracy within the movement. There you be. That is what the strategy needs to accomplish. Here are the 8 stages of successful social movements. Stage 1, normal times. In the first stage, normal times, there are many conditions, which is happening now, that grossly violate widely held, cherished human values. Our freedoms, our democracy, our security, our justice being violated, and the best interest of society as a whole being violated. Moreover, these conditions are maintained by the policies of the public and the private power holders, the powers that be, and a majority of public opinion. Yet these violations of values, not really noticed. They're unnoticed, and they are neither in the public spotlight nor on the society's agenda of hotly contested issues. Normal times are politically quiet times. Some past normal times in history are the violation of African American civil rights before the 1960s, the Vietnam War before 1967. Right now, the NSA, the drones, Guantanamo torture, wealth inequality, right? The opposition of these conditions and policies is small and receives public ridicule, more public ridicule than support. The professional opposition organizations are centralized, formal organizations, often with national offices in D.C., which try to win achievable reforms through the mainstream political channels such as electoral process and the courts. The grassroots groups are composed of local citizens who oppose present conditions and policies but do not have the support of the majority local population. They represent the victim's perspective and provide direct services to victims. In stage 1, the normal times, the powers to be often promote their own policies that support the interests of society's privileged and powerful, which violate the interests and values of the society as a whole. The public in stage 1, the public consensus supports the power holders' powers to be policies. The status quo is just fine. We don't really know what's going on. The goals at stage 1 are to document that the problem exists. A serious problem exists. Maintain an active opposition no matter how small, no matter how seemingly insignificant. Maintain an active opposition and move on to the next stage. The thing we have to look out for in stage 1 is the main danger to be stuck in the normal times indefinitely because of political naivete, not knowing the realities of political and social life, and feeling powerless to create change. The conclusion of stage 1, normal times are politically quiet times. The powers to be successfully promote their official doctrine and policies while hiding their actual actions that they're doing, their doctrine and policies, hereby keeping the violations of the conditions and their policies out of the public consciousness and off of the society's agenda, keeping you and me hopeless, and, well, there's nothing we can do about it, right? Well, stage 2, my goodness, I only got 5 minutes left in the show, don't I?
How many stages are there, dude?
8 stages. Successful social movements have 8 stages.
Cliffhanger.
Okay.
Stay tuned for next week.
Yeah, we got... Okay, it's kind of like you can't expect to graduate with a 4-year degree in only 2 years. People gave up on the Occupy movement after 2 years, when reality, it's going to take like 4 or 5 years of work to make real change in a successful social movement. Real quickly, speeding up very quickly, stage 2, we have to prove the failure of the institutions. Positive results are not expected this early in the movement. The point is not to win the cases, but to prove that the power holders are preventing the democratic system from working, right? Our goals in stage 2 are document the problem, including the involvement of the power holders, document the citizens' attempt to use the normal channels of citizen participation and prove that they did not work, become experts, and build small opposition organizations. This stage, it can be particularly disheartening. The problem and the policies of the power holders continue, and there's little dissent, there's little traction, and it feels like you're going nowhere. You got to keep on keeping on, because stage 3 is when the ripening conditions happen. The takeoff of a new social movement requires preconditions that build up over many years. These conditions include historic developments, a growing discontented population of victims and allies, and the goals, essentially, at this point, the public in stage 3, a public consensus to support the powers to be policies and problems still remains off the agenda. No one's really talking about it. The goals at this point, we're trying to recognize the historical conditions that make a new movement possible, to create, inspire, prepare the new wave groups to be, including the formation of new networks, new leadership, new expertise that will spearhead the new movement, prepare pre-existing networks to be concerned about the issues, get involved in the upcoming movement, personalize the problem, and begin a small prototype non-violent movement. I got to move really fast. Okay, stage 4 is social movement takeoff, which is what really the Occupy movement was. It took off, it gained traction, it got the conversation started, people figured it out. Stage 5 is the identity crisis of powerlessness. Stage 6 is, wait for it, majority public support. And stage 7 is finally success. We reach success in stage 7. But stage 8 is maintaining and continuing the struggle. I'll tell you what, that's a great cliffhanger for the next program. We will really continue that conversation and pick up where we have to leave it off at this point, because we only got a couple minutes left. Scott, man, it's great to have you back, buddy. I missed you for a few weeks there. I want to throw it to you for a minute for your final thoughts, your riff, man, and let her go. We got a couple minutes here.
Oh man, that's not enough time. Yeah,
right.
I posted a good picture on our Facebook page the other day from Malcolm X, where the quote is, "If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing." That's a Malcolm X quote, and it just shows to go you that shutting out the poison of the corporate, zeitgeist. I mean, it's really it's propaganda. I mean, calling things what they really are, and the use of the term propaganda is a really important first step, because anytime you sit down and watch anything, I mean, I won't say nightly news, but anything on the corporate media, it's propaganda, whether it's, sports or so-called politics. I mean, it's junk politics, but it's a shell game, because it's not in anyone's best interest of at least not anybody who has any money, to change the status quo. And while the rest of us are suffering and continuing to be looted and pilfered, they are getting richer and they want to maintain that power and that status quo. And so they're not going to tell you what's really going on. And it's not even a conspiracy. It's more of the natural progression of capitalism and the accumulation of wealth. Those who accumulate wealth want to keep that wealth and they don't want to give it back. And they sure as hell don't want to be taxed for it. They don't want to, they don't want to share their wealth. And so what we have today is a natural progression of the cancer stages of capitalism, where the economic system is such that it benefits only a very few, and I mean like 85 people. What's the statistic came out 2 weeks ago? 85 people have more money than 3.5.
400 people.
No, there's an actual specific statistic that came out 2 weeks ago. It said 85 people in the world have more money than 3.5 billion people. 3.5 million people have less money than 85 people. And I mean, that's unsustainable. I mean, they're literally oppressors. And so it's just, we have to resist, we have to fight back. And it starts with education, and it starts with understanding what is really happening. It starts with stepping out of your day-to-day stress. And the problem is, as I see it, and I suffer from this myself, is the stress of unemployment, of the day-to-day living situations, of commuting. I mean, there's just a lot of stress in the American life and Western civilization as a whole. And that is no coincidence, because that's what happens when you are economically insecure and when we're actually being literally oppressed, and whether it be a violation of our First Amendment rights or Fourth Amendment rights or whatever. And so stepping outside of the mainstream and expanding your understanding of what is really going on in your day-to-day world, and always taking things to the much larger picture, i.e. looking at the disease rather than the symptoms, because we are all so consumed by the symptoms, is a really important first step. And shutting out the poison of the cant of popular culture and the corporate media, et cetera, is really important. So don't watch television. Don't listen to corporate media. Don't listen to the radio. It's read. It really requires reading. And that means alternative news sources, Democracy Now!, commondreams.org, Real News Network, obviously anything Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill write, Chris Hedges, these and voices who are literally counterintuitive to what other people think is the norm. And so that's all I got to say about that.
You the man, brother from another mother. It's so good to have you back. You get the final word. We're totally out of time. We're over time, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Our next show, we're going to finish the movement action plan, because we need successful social movements for real change, and those successful social movements need a strategic framework to be successful. We started the conversation tonight. We'll continue it next Filter Free Radio, but I can't end the show without thanking everyone who makes this show possible. There's a lot of people on my list. First and foremost, thanks to my brother from another mother, our super duper awesome ass producer, kick-ass co-host, Mr. Skeptical Scott. I want to thank Nicole Sandler for syndicating us on her RadioOrNot.com network. Thanks to Kenny Pick for syndicating us on Liberal Justice Radio, on TuneIn and A Online Radio. I got to thank our music production maestros, Kevin McLeod of Incompetech.com and Dano of DanoSongs.com for music production. I want to thank our webmaster and our website guru, Shano of TalkingLeft.com, for giving us our awesome website and giving us a brand new website too that's coming very soon. Super excited. And thanks for having me on Talking Left yesterday. Always appreciate the opportunity. And a huge thanks, most importantly, to you, our listeners, our friends, for liking the show, spreading the word, helping us grow. Thank you. Thanks to our friends in the chat room. We love the conversation. We appreciate you very much. All 22 of you in both chat rooms. Thank you. And a big thank you to JD Fishin, my puppy sitter, and the official gourmet chef of Filter Free Radio, whom without I would be starving, incoherent, and hands full with a puppy, not be able to do the show. Can't do the show without you. Thank you. If you want to be a contributor to Filter Free Radio in any way, email me, jacob@filterfreeradio.com. I would love to get you on the thank you list and use your work. And don't forget, we need you to help participate. We need you to get active. We need you to be the change. and we need you to help us make a difference. Keep up the good fight, and we'll see you next Monday. Much love, y'all.
Filter-free
There's
radio.
a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop.
So give me something to believe, 'cause I am living just to believe, and I need something more to keep on breathing for. So give me something to believe.
The revolution will be broadcast
Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Filter-free radio.